There was, my original coming out was in 1983 over at Seattle Counseling Service. I forget who was in charge at that time, but they were at 1505 Broadway. And they would have regular Friday night meetings, and that's where I met a bunch of transgendered people there. And one of them, well, we founded an organization called the Emerald City. And that was an organization for transvestites to get together and go to restaurants and do things. It was a social club. But one of the people who was involved, her name was Michelle, she used to go to conventions like this, you know, in other parts of the country, and said, we should have one here. She was in her employment. She was a major magazine and salesperson, regional manager, thing like that. So marketing. She was all about that. And so we thought, okay, we can put on a convention here. I was secretary of the Emerald City at the time, and so okay, this person's got an idea. Let's put together, see what we can do with it. And we decided, number one, don't do it in Seattle, because you get a bunch of people in a convention to come to Seattle, and they won't come to your classes and meetings. They'll be out on the town. So we decided Port Angeles, a logging town, a rural town. Who's the senator from there? Jim Hargrove? Is that him? Anyway, he's one of the Democrats who might as well have an R in the back of his name. Anyway, real conservative town, I thought. But the Red Lion Inn was perfectly open to host the convention. So, well, this person, Michelle, kind of planned convention things. I had to think about, okay, police, city council, chamber of commerce, you know, these practical things that you got to do. So I called them, and then I went over and visited them, and yeah, they were fine. And then somebody else in the Emerald City said, well, they would like to do tea in Victoria at the Empress Hotel. Now, you think about post 9/11, to put a bunch of transvestites on a ferry boat to go cross customs lines with identifications that don't match what they look like, to be in another country and then come back into the United States, you cannot do that. But we did it that was 1990. That was 1990. That convention in Port Angeles is still going on every year in May. And Port Angeles looks forward to it because we did some good public relations building. They have a thing in Port Angeles called, that they support their children's hospital or their hospital over there. It's little, they sell little rubber duckies, and you put a number on them and you pay some money for each duck. And they let them go in the Elwha River, and whichever duck comes first out the end, you know, there's some prize or something like that. And the money goes to benefit their hospital. Well, the gals, I think we had 60, 70 people at the first convention. They bought tons of ducks. That really solidified that group in with the Port Angeles. And then the profit that we made off the convention, we gave to the battered women's shelter. Another big write-up in the paper. So every year, Port Angeles looks forward to this. Pretty soon they'll have a spree day, probably, or a spree week. So these things can happen if they're well organized, if you meet people where they are, understanding, like, we're doing an interview, and so the consideration is, okay, your lighting, your spacing, where you're going to sit, where everybody's going to sit, that sort of thing, noise levels. Well, if you're dealing with a city council, or you're dealing with a mayor or other people like that, you got to understand what issues they're trying to deal with. Police, public safety. Mayor, re-election, but if you meet people where they are and you take into consideration and accommodate, their concerns, they're more than willing to accommodate yours, and things work. This is why in Queer Nation, when we did our demonstrations, we always contacted the police first, told them where we're going to start, where we're going to go, what we're going to do, and if they had any pushback on something, okay, we'll go down this street instead of that street, and we'll do this thing instead of that thing. They're fine. Surprises is the main thing that officials don't like. If there's no surprises, they are happy. And so we try to keep them from having surprises.